Cool. Turn your screen share off.
We're good. I'm letting them in, so we are where we are.
Yeah.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Ron. I think Jordan's getting connected here. He's in, but
Our live stream hasn't started yet. I scheduled it for 3 p.m., so we have 2 minutes.
okay, cool. Hey, Jordan.
Hey, Jordan.
See ya.
How goes it?
Very well, thank you.
Awesome.
Good to see you after all this time.
Yeah, it's been a few years. Pre-COVID, I think.
We're still kicking it.
Yeah, we're still doing this. Yep. They haven't kicked us off yet.
I love it. Well, this is an institution at this point. Come on now.
Yeah, hard to kill institutions.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the wrong time.
They don't innovate, Jordan. I remember reading that somewhere.
Yeah, right.
Big companies don't innovate.
Oh my gosh, I'm a little scared that all my words are going to come back and haunt me in this interview.
How's everybody doing today?
Hey,
Good.
Jordan.
The other Jordan. We have two Jordans on the line.
Oh, fantastic.
Jordan from Voice America and Jordan Birnbaum. So,
Awesome.
Hi, Jordan from Voice America.
How you doing?
How's it going?
Going well. Let me go ahead and get some levels for everybody real quick. I will start with you, Ed. Can I please get a count back from 5 for you?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Awesome. Sounding great. Ron, can I please get a count back from 5 for you?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Awesome. Sounding great. And then Jordan, can I please get a count back from 5 for you?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, awesome. Sounding great there. Got about 2 minutes until showtime here.
Fabulous.
Awesome. Greg, though, that's Jordan's blog on Psychology Today.
I saw that it's in his email signature.
Okay, cool. That's where I'm going to get some of my questions, some of his posts.
And Jordan, I don't know if you remember, we trade off segments. I'll be doing segments 1 and 3. Ron is doing 2 and 4. We take breaks 15, 30, 45. We got to be off at 57. It's a hard close. So once we are off, just stay with us so we can say goodbye to you, etc. The first segment's me. I'm going to read the bio, and then I want to find all about Glinda. That's what I want to. That's what I want to talk about.
Nice.
Is it named after one of the witches? Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I'll tell the story.
Excellent.
Cool. And if you're a Wicked fan, not Glinda, but Glinda.
Glinda.
Well, she did change it to honor.
Did change it. Yes.
The poor professor.
Oh.
And Ed, shout out Geraldine.
Yep.
Next week is Woodard Roundtable.
Woodard Roundtable, yeah.
And before I dip out of here, Jordan, good to see you again. I was here last time. I think you were at ADP at the time.
That's
and
right.
I was shocked that ADP would hire somebody with such a cool title. I'm going to be in the background for the show. We are experimenting this week, and the live stream is active right now. I can't guarantee that we're getting a lot of viewers because we just announced it 30 minutes ago, but we are live streaming to all of the major social platforms.
Fantastic.
Cool.
I just have to say, seeing your background makes me want to come over with my guitar.
The very first show that I took my son to, I think he was 10 years old, was a Fish show because Grateful Dead was no longer performing. So, yeah.
Wow.
I've got all sorts of Grateful Dead paraphernalia in here, but I won't take the time.
Jerry Garcia.
15 seconds here.
I'm literally staring at a Jerry Garcia action figure.
Wow. I remember we had a local columnist here in San Francisco, Herb Kane.
Oh.
That's a blow from the past. But somebody said, the Grateful Dead's playing tonight, and he said, I wonder what song they're going to play.
Funny. That's a great line.
It is a great line.
I was really proud of myself when I moved back to New York, and I said, it's so great to be back in New York at night and look up at the star.
That's good too.
Good one.
Which is probably a planet.
You're probably right.
We're coming up to showtime. We're ready for
All
you,
right.
Donald. All right, have a great show. Going
Okay.
in 5,
Awesome.
4, 3, 2.
Welcome to the Soul of Enterprise, Business in the Knowledge Economy, sponsored by Woodard, building your ideal practice with coaching, education, community, and resources. I'm Ed Kless with my good friend and co-host Ron Baker, and folks, on today's show, we have our second interview with Jordan Birnbaum. Hey, Ron, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going great, Al. I'm looking forward to this. Get to talk some behavioral economics.
Yeah, always, it's always a fun topic to talk about. So let me read Jordan in. This is his second time on, but things have changed for him, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Jordan Birnbaum is an industrial/organizational psychologist, applied behavioral scientist, and serial entrepreneur, specializing in leadership, motivation, organizational design, product design, sales, marketing, UX, which is user experience, HR and HR technology. He is the CEO of Glinda Group, a firm dedicated to enhancing employee, customer, and prospect engagement through applied social science. He previously served as the vice president and chief behavioral economist at ADP, where he directed the application of economic principles to new product development in the human capital management market. He is also, we talked about this the last time, so you can look this up on the show, owned and operated the Vanguard in Los Angeles, a renowned music and entertainment venue. Welcome back to the Soul of Enterprise, Jordan Birnbaum.
Thank you so much. What a delight and pleasure. I'm so happy to see you both, and can't wait to dig into it today.
Yeah, so as I said, a lot has changed. You're back on your own. You're back doing the entrepreneurial thing, which is fantastic. Ron and I love that. Tell me about Glinda Group.
Okay, it's really exciting. And in fact, there's a correction to be made. I am not the CEO of Glinda Group.
Okay.
In fact, I recruited the CEO of Glinda Group.
While
I was at ADP. I had built with an amazing team a product called Compass, which had some great success with leadership development. And around the same time, ADP acquired the Marcus Buckingham Company, which had a different but related product called Standout. And when that acquisition was final, I met one of my new colleagues at the Marcus Buckingham Company, a woman named Laura Martin. And even though we were in sort of a tricky professional situation, we ended up striking an incredible friendship and supported each other's products for the next several years in one of the most effective collaborations I'd ever had. And so fast forward a few years later, and I'm back to being a consultant. ADP is one of my anchor clients, happily. It's always a good thing when your former employer brings you back as a consultant. You didn't pick off anybody, thankfully. And I was having fun, but also realizing that there were elements of the job that I wasn't loving, and also kind of missed the camaraderie of a team. And I thought about who would be the right person to partner with. And just Laura came directly to mind. At this point, she was the CHRO for the second largest reinsurance brokerage in the world. Actually, they're headquartered out of London. And so she was doing great, but I don't think she had the same kind of passion as the kind of work that we're doing now. So I called her up and I made the pitch that she should quit her job and come start this new company with me. And she agreed. And I'll share the story of the name and then shut up for a moment. But we were in one of our first meetings, and when she was explaining why she was excited to work with me, she talked about Compass, and she said, you know, I've seen you use behavioral science to affect people in positive ways that you've never met before. You're like a wizard, but for good. And I was like, yeah, like Glinda. I'm a good witch. And we just sort of both laughed. And she said, you know that Wicked is my favorite musical. And my wife is downstairs and it's her favorite musical. She's seen it like 7 times. It's, you know, several months before the movie came out. And it was just like, well, that's who we are, I suppose. And the Glinda Group was born in that moment. And I have to say, the name has been, it's a pretty big hit. Like, we're getting a lot of love for it. So delighted that it's sending out the kind of message that we want. It's conveying the emotions that we want it to.
And of course, that's actually the Glinda from the original Wizard of Oz, because the Glinda from Wicked, this could be a little sketchy there.
Well, it could be Galinda, could be Glinda. It depends on at what point in the story you're picking it up.
Absolutely correct.
We'll take either.
Yeah,
They're
no,
both good in our book.
I'm a big fan as well. I think it's got some of the most clever lyrics that has ever been written on Broadway. And he's one of the few that does a great job when this is Stephen Schwartz, the author. Well, when he writes music and lyrics together, it's something special because most Broadway, it's usually a team. So there are very limited people who do it solo. Anyway, we're not going to
also add to that the hits in Wicked musically are more complicated than any other that I've heard. So Defying Gravity is not a typical song. It doesn't have the usual, sort of fallback 4/4 into 3/4 or whatever it might be. It's really a work of art.
Yeah, no, it is. Some really incredible chord progressions as well. But now, that was not the purpose of our call, however interesting that is. I'm going to jump right out and say, I think since we last talked, there has been let's call it a challenge to behavioral economics. There was some situation with one of the founding fathers, if you will, of behavioral economics, Daniel Ariely, and some maybe perhaps faking of data or massaging of data. Let's address that from the get-go.
Yeah, so it's a great call out. One of the things that I've really kind of gotten comfortable with over the years is that the term behavioral economics did not exist during the Milgram experiments, but that was behavioral economics. And the term behavioral economics did not exist during the 1950s advertising boom as portrayed in Mad Men, but that was behavioral science. And so one of the things that I think has happened is it's always been social psychology. Since the late 1800s in Germany, we're always talking about social psychology. There's clinical psychology, which is going in, social psychology, which is how we all affect each other and how we interact with our environments and each other. So I think that were we to evaluate the state of the field, we would have to go back and say, all right, well, things look pretty bleak when Zimbardo was doing his stuff with the Stanford prison experiment. And you will not have a hard time going through any period where you will find bad actors that have gone for the easy hit and taken a shortcut. Now, I don't know anything about the specifics of the most recent allegations, so I don't want to say that I have an opinion one way or the other about where those will land. But I think that when you take a step back and you look at the entirety of social psychology, then what's happening right now is not so atypical.
Well, I have been quoted exactly once in Harvard Business Review. I don't know if I told you the story last. Exactly once, and it's
10 more times, then I'll be happy. Go ahead.
And the sentence is, "Business ain't science." That's it.
There you go.
That's my only ever quote in Harvard Business Review. So I'll take that. But and I think that's the same thing. We call it behavioral science, but I think when you really think about it, it's using science in an older notion of that term. It's really about behavioral knowledge of human behavior, not science as in totally causal effect that if you see this blue dot, you're going to buy this pair of pants.
Precisely right. And there's another thing, a point that I love to make whenever I'm lecturing on behavioral science that I think actually really sort of adds some weight to what you just said. Whenever I teach any behavioral principle, nobody is ever like, really? I had no idea. Everyone's reaction to everything is always like, oh yeah. We are all expert at behavioral science because we've been experimenting with it since we're kids. Now, the thing is that we all use things like loss aversion or psychological reactance. We use these things, but unconsciously, and we just don't happen to know the names. And so whenever I'm teaching people about behavioral science, what I've come to learn is I'm not teaching them anything that they haven't been doing their entire life. I just teach them the names of things. The reason that that is so powerful, of course, is that you can't do something on purpose unless you know the name. And so that's why it is worth it to learn the names of these things that we've been doing unconsciously our whole lives, because it provides a level of intentionality that makes us significantly more effective.
And I think because I think so many people think that marketing is just purely about manipulation, and people say, well, we have these big companies and all they do is manipulate into buying stuff we don't need. Well, don't buy it. Like I don't quite understand the full logic behind that we suddenly just buy stuff that we don't really want because somebody said magic words to us. It really, I think, takes some of the sentience out of the consumer. It's really I'm trying to think up the word. It's like, but it's very patriarchal to think that, right, that people have that much control over other human beings.
I think that's a really incredible point. At the end of the day, we have, I think, much more control over our ultimate decisions, and the way that we engage with marketing is really usually who was able to actually reach us, our authentic selves, for the connection rather than some kind of manipulation. I think they actually found us.
And in fact, I had a question about a particular story that I want to ask you about, but since you used the word right now, I want to talk to you about it. I want to hear your definition of authentic or authenticity.
All right. I would like to say that I have a piece called The Irony Ball, and it's about a fictitious game between the great communicators and the authentic leaders for who could be most ironic. Authenticity... to me, authenticity means being entirely yourself without any regard for others. So it's another way of saying a narcissistic jerk. I'm much more interested in someone who has the capacity to think about how they're treating others and making an effort to be as cordial and productive and positive as they can, as opposed to someone who might be in a bad mood and then decides they want to just expose everyone else to it. Now, other people define authentic in some other way. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I'm a student of Peter Block, and he defines authenticity in a way that it was just being willing to say what you see and feel. That's all he defines it as, being willing to do that, especially in a consulting type relationship where you're. But he also says that it is putting emotions into words in a non-emotional way, right? So it's trying to state emotions as a statement of fact rather than using emotion to manipulate. Does that make sense?
I support both of those two descriptions. They sound excellent to me. It's just a question of what do we call them?
Yeah, exactly. I think it was Plato. Wisdom begins with the definition of terms. So
we're back to names again. So
that's right. We got to start and agree on a definition. Otherwise, we're playing tennis on two different courts. See that all the time. All right, but we're up against our first break. Want to remind our listeners that they can get a hold of Ron or me by sending an email to asktsoe@verisage.com. Of course, the website is The Soul of Enterprise, where you can see show notes as well as previews to upcoming shows. We do have our Patreon channel, so go on, check that out at patreon.com/TSOE. There you can get the show commercial free, as well as listen to the bonus episodes that Ron and I record. Also want to make sure that you can get a shout out at that Patreon channel like Geraldine Carter does for her new community, Peak Freedom. If you want to rise above the insanity of the hustle and culture and simply work less hours while keeping your income, go visit GeraldineCarter.com/peak. But right now, a word from our sponsors.
All clear. Back in 2.
Fun stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
I forgot to talk about the Glinda Group. That's great.
Jordan,
That was
was
really fun. I don't care. I'm much more interested in the organic, wonderful conversation.
Oh, we can hit it again. I didn't realize ADP bought Buckingham. Was his product Standout? Was that the
Yes.
one that it was a self-diagnostic and it told you if you were adventurous or?
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, I took that at a thought leader meeting, and yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it did something entirely different than Compass, but they were still related enough that selling them started to get tricky. And so we had to find different lanes in which we could coexist. It was interesting.
Sure. And I'm curious if you know James Buchanan, the economist.
Yes.
He wrote a book and he looked at the theory of moral sentiments and Smith's Wealth of Nations, and he found behavioral economics buried in both. It was fascinating. I mean, even loss aversion was buried. Smith's got certain passages where you go, holy crap, that sounds like Kahneman, you know?
What a genius.
I forget the name of the book, but it was really, really
Oh, I'll check
interesting.
that out. That sounds great.
James Buchanan. It was, yeah, I'll try and find it when you're on with Ed again, but it was really interesting. I,
Go
I
ahead and
even think
reference
of
back in 30 seconds.
Mises, going his praxeology, which he thought came before economics,
Yeah.
and it was all psychology. It was all human
It
behavior.
always is. Yeah.
It always is. Yeah. Like Munger said, if economics isn't behavioral, what the hell is it?
It's literally it tracks behavior.
So I'm going to hit on some of your articles, your blog posts.
My favorite topic.
Awesome. Excellent. Yeah. Some of them are really thought provoking.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. Well, you're coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back, everybody. We're here with Jordan Birnbaum and we're talking about engagement from the inside out. And Jordan, you have a great blog on Psychology Today where you wrote some articles. I've been marinating in them since last night. And no, they're really good. I really like them. They're punchy and they're opinionated. I love it. I love it. One that struck me is it's titled "It's Personal: The Real Source of Business Success," and all I could think, of course, is Godfather. It's not personal; it's business.
Right.
You reverse it. Explain.
What's interesting is that whenever you look at any kind of indication of a business's health, for example, if you want to look at employee engagement or, employee sentiment or customer sentiment, ultimately, the thing that you're always going for is, do people care? Do they take it personally? Literally, employee engagement is the degree to which organizational success matters to the individual. And it literally predicts discretionary effort. And so if people are not feeling personally about your business, they are simply not going to try as hard. If customers don't feel personally about your business, they are not going to be as good or as loyal a customer as you can have. And so the irony is that in every strain of business, we're actually trying to get people to feel very personally about our business, whether it's an employee, a customer, or even just trying to enhance our brand. So it always struck me as just a pretty lame excuse to legitimize antisocial behavior.
Right, by saying it's business, it's
By
not
saying it's
personal.
business, so therefore I'm going to
Yeah.
act in a totally unjustifiable way.
Yeah,
Because
it's
otherwise
a
I can
great
justify
point.
it. Yeah.
That discretionary effort point is beautiful because, I think of companies like Disney and even FedEx, maybe in the early days more than now, but amazing stories about people, running helicopters to deliver the pack. I mean, that discretionary effort is the X factor that you can't measure.
Exactly.
And you talk about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. I'd love for you to break that down because we haven't talked about that in a long time.
Yeah, sure. It's for me, the ultimate example of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation was being 19 years old in college. And do I play another video game or do I get out of bed and go to class? Intrinsic motivation was stay in bed and play the video game because that's what I really wanted to do. Extrinsic motivation was roll out of bed and go to class because that's what I had to do. And so extrinsic motivation is doing something because we have to. And so most of our motivators at work tend to be extrinsic. So I'm going to work hard to get a promotion, or I'm going to work hard to get this bonus, or I'm going to work hard to get some kind of outcome that exists outside of me. Or I'm going to work hard to not get fired.
Fired.
But basically, people are motivated by things that will happen outside of them, which are usually the levers that are easiest for organizations to pull. Intrinsic motivation is I'm doing this because I want to. And I'm doing this because I want to is infinitely more powerful. So when people are intrinsically motivated, they try way harder. So in some ways, the ultimate is can you get people intrinsically motivated at work? And there's actually one leadership theory that proved that you can. It's called self-determination theory by DC and Ryan. And these geniuses discovered that if people had three fundamental needs met at work, they felt so good about life that they were intrinsically motivated to show up and work as hard as they could. And the three needs were autonomy, mastery, and connection. Now, autonomy simply meant that they were free to determine how to achieve their goals. Not that anybody could do whatever they want, just that they had the autonomy to decide how to get it done. So no micromanagement. We all have to feel like we're worth something. So having the opportunity to demonstrate our mastery and to be celebrated for it by our team and by our leader is a really fundamental human need. And then if we are connected with our colleagues, if we have a good morale on our team, good personal dynamics, those are so fundamental to human happiness that when all three of those are met, we're going to show up to work and work as hard as we can just to keep it because we're going to want to protect that thing that we have. And that's the kind of intrinsic motivation. And so I think when you talk about the stories of FedEx employees going to unbelievable lengths to get something done, they're doing it because they want to protect the thing that they love. And the thing that they love is that culture and their coworkers and their colleagues and the ability to have these be the people with whom they go to bat every day. And so if we can find either as leaders of teams or leaders of organizations, a way to fulfill those human needs, the performance we get in return is extraordinary.
And it seems to me, Jordan, that businesses don't seem to understand this. Peter Drucker even wrote about this decades ago where he said, stop trying to bribe knowledge workers. It doesn't work. They're volunteers. Look at how people work so hard for non-for-profit where they're not paid or paid very little. Why do you think this lesson isn't better understood?
Gosh, I could go in so many different directions there. I think that oftentimes it's hard to maintain clarity under tremendous pressure. And I think that we're in a professional environment where even the people who are thriving are feeling under immense pressure. Even if you think about Moore's law and the rate of change in technology and literally everything is changing faster and faster every day because of the size of computer chips and processing power. And so I do think that we're in this sort of spiral of, hitting numbers, constant growth with the world constantly shifting underneath our feet, making that less and less viable. And then the threat of what's the economy going to look like in 5 years with AI, that it's not creating an environment that's conducive to reflection. And so I think a lot of people are just in the hamster wheel right now. And we, of course, we'd be well served to step out and take a moment and take a deep breath.
Excellent. Another post you put up was what big business can learn from big sports about human assets. I won't quibble with the violation of the 13th Amendment there. I don't think humans are assets, but that aside, I love your take on this. It was brilliant. I wasn't sure where you were going to go with this, but I love where you went. Explain what big business can learn from sports.
Well, so right now in big business, let's go with the greatest basketball player of all time, Michael Jordan. So if the Chicago Bulls were a corporation, then after Michael Jordan's rookie year, when he showed that extraordinary promise, he would be promoted to the coaching staff. And then 2 seasons after that, he would become an executive. And so because Michael Jordan was the greatest player in the world, the first thing we would do is have him stop playing. And so that was sort of this first understanding that we need to start realizing that our organizations have players and coaches, and we keep taking our best players and turning them into coaches and taking our best coaches and turning them into players.
Bad players and bad coaches.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we have things complete. One of the things about leaders is leaders need to be patient. Leaders need to have a high tolerance for irrationality. Leaders need to be attuned to emotional realities of the people in their team. The people who are high achievers are the least like that in the world. High achievers have no patience. High achievers don't leave room for emotional realities. Emotions to high achievers are a waste of time. And yet we continue to put high achievers into leadership positions, which, by the way, make them miserable. They hate it. No one is winning here, except that I think the idea, the reason that everybody wants to have a team is because when layoffs happen, they want to make sure they're in the room and are protecting themselves and have a hand in what's going to happen. So if we could just assure Michael Jordan, keep playing, you'll be invited into the room when layoffs are happening, we might then convince them to stay on the floor. And so I think that we need to understand what's really behind the need to lead, and then start realizing that the people who ought to be leading our organizations are the ones who have the most friends. It's about personal dynamics leadership. If you look at the Gallup Q12, the things that drive engagement, it's all human relationships. And so the people who should be in leadership positions ought to be those who excel in human relationships. Strategy and execution are separate from leadership. And if we understand that, then we'll keep our players playing with strategy and execution, and we'll put our people specialists into the leadership positions.
Yeah, it ties perfectly back to your it's personal, not business point.
Exactly.
Let me ask you about the 6 words every worker needs to hear, because I also love this, the difference between status and recognition.
Yeah, status is one of my favorite subjects, and it's actually was just talking with my partner Laura earlier about a tool that we're going to build for it. The 6 words are, and that's why we need you. And what I explain is that the difference between status and recognition is you did something great and I saw it. But status is you're part of this team because you do this. Status looks to the future. It's really about belonging. And that's why when you can say to someone, you did this, and that's why we need you, it's not just a statement about what you did in the past, it's a statement about where you belong in the future. And status actually for us is one of the best experiences that we can have. The need for status, we often conflate it with like high society. That's not it at all. Status is literally just belonging. And if we can make sure that everyone on every team feels like they belong there, then the likelihood of them being intrinsically motivated to give their best to protect that status goes way up. And so if leaders can think about shifting from, hey, you did a really good job with that, to, or here's a tangible example. Rather than saying, hey, you contributed in lots of great ways in that project, you can say, hey, you're this team's Swiss Army knife.
Yeah. The other point I really liked about that is you say it's also status leads to storytelling. That's excellent. I just love that. It's a great point. Unfortunately, Jordan, we're up against our first break, or second break, actually. And folks, I'd like to remind you, if you want to contact me or Ed, send us an email to asktsoe@verisage.com. And now a word from our sponsors.
All clear. Back in 2.
Cool.
Awesome. Great stuff, Jordan.
I've never been interviewed on that before. That's the most fun I ever had.
Oh, I got more. So
Yeah, no, I'm actually going to go pull a little bit from an article that I found in Global Risk Community, which is your article, Building Cognitive Budget for Your Most Effective Mind.
So, oh, wow. Fantastic. That was actually originally an MIT Sloan. But
yes.
yeah.
Yes. I could, on the MIT Sloan site, you can't get all of it. But Global Risk Community, they print the whole things.
That's ridiculous. I'll send you the PDF.
No, that's it is fully available on the other ones. Anyway, but I'm going to answer Ron's question like he asked you, which is, why do you think that people do? Because they have a learning disability. I am firmly convinced that business has a learning disability.
Yeah, doesn't learn from its mistakes. The second kick of the mule provides no education. I think
we've oversimplified. We've just so oversimplified business. I think the whole idea of shareholder capitalism has gotten into a really big mess because there used to be a consideration about like a business was more than just a profit-making machine, and that just. Really
I think shareholder capitalism is misunderstood. This is a big bugaboo between Ron and I that Ron and I talk about. Shareholder capitalism is fine, but what has happened is, and even Milton Friedman talked about this. There's a difference between purpose and result. The result of a business is profit, but that's not its purpose. Right. And Milton Friedman never said it was the purpose. It was the result.
But it's happened either way.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. It's not shareholder capitalism per se. It's a misunderstanding about it, right?
That's like blaming religion for all of humans, evil. And it's like, no, humans are evil. That's why humans are evil. No, not because of religion.
I'm back in 15 seconds.
Great. I'm just going to pick up on a couple of things that Ron was talking about, and then we'll move over to that article.
Awesome.
All right, coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
And we are back with Jordan Birnbaum of the Glinda Group. Jordan, I want to just pick up on a couple things that you and Ron were talking about, especially the whole sports analogy. And I really like that article too. Are you aware that Babe Ruth, perhaps the greatest baseball player that ever lived, died heartbroken because no one would hire him as a manager? He desperately wanted to be a manager. The best he got was he was a coach for the Brooklyn Dodgers. And when their manager left, they did not promote him, and he was devastated. And someone said to him, "Babe, you can't manage yourself. How are you going to manage a team?"
Oh, that's pretty funny.
but he really thought that, that he should have been given that ability to move into management. But he was terrible. Barry Bonds would be a terrible manager. Wayne Gretzky was a horrible coach.
There's an economic study right here. I bet you that you'll find the best coaches were the mediocre players.
Absolutely. I was going to say Phil Jackson, right? Mike Krzyzewski in basketball. All these guys were solid players. They were fun, but because you can't. Gretzky can't say skate to where the puck is going to be like I did.
And Jordan can't tell people to compete the way that he did. Or
Right.
Kobe. They
Right.
can't reach people. Magic Johnson wasn't able to coach because he just couldn't reach folks. It's very interesting. But it again, I think that if you dive into the team dynamics in any sport, really from Little League to the pros, there is so much insight into the human condition, how we interact with each other, how we can be each other's best friends or worst enemies. And it's really compelling.
Yeah, and worse. And you were talking about this with Ron, that you can't. It is unheard of that you have somebody who's a subordinate make more money than a superior,
Right?
Except in sports.
Exactly, where the organizations tend to be, measured as ruthlessly as possible.
Yeah, and the players make the most money.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about this article. It's called "Building the Cognitive Budget for Your Most Effective Mind." First, you got to define for folks, what do you mean when you say cognitive budget?
So I found an exercise through listening to some podcasts and then some tinkering of my own, in which I was able to sort of plot out the things that I thought were really healthy for me to think about and the things that I thought were really unhealthy for me to think about. And so I was trying to consider that I only have a set amount of mental energy per day. And I realized that where it was getting spent, I felt like I was just sort of letting it happen. And whether or not it was being spent on the right things, it just didn't feel intentional to me. And so the idea of the cognitive budget was specifically to try to remind myself that when my mind was wandering, where do I want it to go? What are useful things for me to think about? And not necessarily happy things. Like sometimes you need to confront something that's going very wrong in your life and you need to force yourself to reflect on it. But I found that the more that I was intentional in writing down what I wanted, the better I was able to execute it in my life. And the most important way that it affected me was that it stopped my rumination. So rumination, I think, is an under discussed problem for most people. Rumination is the process of thinking negatively in circles with no off-ramp, where you're no longer gaining anything of value by thinking about it. I can tell you that I would be, as recently as 5 years ago, down in the basement playing with my dog and thinking about things that I did in high school that I was ashamed of. There's no value there. That's just to make myself feel bad. And I actually heard about rumination as a field of study on a podcast called Hidden Brain, which is wonderful. And it got me to start thinking about my own rumination. And I realized I would ruminate about the same set of things all the time. And so I wrote them down. And what I found happening was that I still would ruminate, but I would catch myself as soon as I did it. And since I had written them down, it was just really easy to spot. And then I had said, "Hey, you decided that there was no point in doing this, so stop it." And eventually I was able to stop it, and now I don't ruminate anymore. And so it was an extraordinary change in my lived experience. But then that also led me to understanding, well, the opposite of rumination is reflection. So if I'm going to first stop spending on the bad stuff, now what's the good stuff? And then I thought, now I need to figure out what are the things that I will really benefit by reflecting on.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen the Bob Newhart clip that he did called "Stop It"?
No, tell me.
You do have to. Bob Newhart plays a psychiatrist. Go figure. Yeah. And it's a little skit thing in one of the shows, and he has this woman come in who says that she has a fear of being buried alive in a box, and she thinks about it all the time. And he says, "Stop it." That's STOP, new word IT.
If only it was that simple.
That's right, but it's actually.
But maybe it is.
Maybe it is that simple, but it's interesting that you talk about this cognitive budget. I stumbled on the same concept a number of years ago, and I called it emotional capacity. Right? What's your emotional capacity? And in another podcast, which I cannot remember the name of, it was not the same as you do. They talked about the same thing. I'm like, this must be a thing, but it was interesting. They said, you know what? There was a very quaint notion in Victorian era that they had this. It was called willpower.
Yeah.
Right. It's simply called willpower. And what you find is that you have more willpower at the beginning of the day than you do at the end. This is why when all of us are dieting, we're like, hey, no problem. I can have a very healthy breakfast and eat lunch. And then you stand there at 10 o'clock at night, shoving your face full of Oreos.
Exactly right. That's incredibly true. In fact, I think that there have been findings that judges hand down harsher sentences right before lunchtime and at the end of the day because they're hungry and tired.
One of the things said that the New York Times made a conscious effort not to conduct meetings where decisions were made after lunch.
That's really smart.
They conduct the meetings need to be where decisions are made need to be conducted in the morning. We can have meetings where we share information but if a decision needs to be made, it should be done in the morning, which I think is wow. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about this, because you've got like a deeper process here. I thought it was really fascinating, and you'd have a 2x2, which is fantastic. So proactive, reactive, work, and personal. So talk a little bit more about that.
So, once I realized that by identifying my sources of rumination, I could stop them, and that by identifying the things that I wanted to reflect on, I could more easily direct my energy there. Then you pretty soon realize that there are two gigantic parts of your life and they have to exist separately. And one is work and the other is everything else. And at work, you have to think about, well, what's going to be healthy for me to reflect on for myself and for me to avoid in terms of rumination. I mean, I'm sure most people have experienced this, going home from work and being really super concerned that they said something terrible in a meeting and circling in their minds about how it's going to ruin their career, and then invariably nothing ever happens, but we keep doing it to ourselves over and over again. And so that would be an example of ruminating in a professional capacity, whereas my story about thinking about things that I was ashamed of from high school while playing with my dog is in my personal life. So it really, when you think about where do I want my energy to go and where do I want it to not go, it's very relevant in your personal life. It's very relevant in your professional life. And then if you're a manager, you have a third level where now you have to think about all the people on your team. And so, one of the most important things as a leader is just to make sure that you don't lose sight of your first job, which is to make sure that everybody in your team is doing okay. And it's really easy to get caught up because we overburden leaders with impossible tasks and to-do lists, that it's really difficult for them to find the space, time, or even energy to check in with everyone on the team. But if they don't, that's when things will start to get away from them. And so even in that regard, they can use a cognitive budget just to make sure that as they're going through the week, they're like, okay, have I checked in with each person, and can take a note to them. I know that each person cares about X, Y, or Z. Have I done something this week to show them that I'm paying attention to what they care about?
And you even suggest like coming up with a list of like, here's what I have to do for all of these different folks on a weekly basis and list it out. So maybe give an example of that.
So, there are some people on a team who are going to be really turned on by recognition and feel really energized by it. Other people are going to really love being given a challenging development project and feel really seen and cared about. Other people want to be included in meetings. Other people want to be given sort of a social role within the group. That's how they feel at their best. And so if a manager is able to understand what's the one thing that matters the most to each person on their team, and just sort of keep a little list and remind themselves, hey, each week, if I could do this one little thing for each person on my team, that in and of itself will demonstrate a commitment to them that is going to go a long way towards keeping them engaged and keeping them caring. And in the impossible calendars of most leaders, the hope would be that we can identify a little thing that doesn't take a lot of time, but even just a 2-minute check-in around the right thing, or providing the right opportunities in the right directions are ways to do it.
But Jordan, I want the 5 steps that I do for everyone. I don't want to have to go through this like on an individual basis. I just, there's just 5. I just need a checklist, Jordan.
But when the robots come, it'll be much easier.
Because what I'm hearing you saying is crazy. Treat people as individuals.
Yes, exactly right. We have to actually address their humanity if we want them to care.
As an individual, not as a group, not part of their group identity, as an individual for them in this particular situation.
That's exactly right. And that's what makes the world go round. Yeah. And our organizations and business. And ultimately we are all still totally dependent on one another to transact. And one of the things that I actually think is funny, thinking about AI replacing all our jobs, is, okay, well, if that happens, then who's going to buy anything? So is AI going to start selling to AI? It'll be interesting to watch.
There may be transactions in AI, but that's a whole different thing. So this has been great, Jordan. Can't wait to hear your rest of the segment with Ron. But we want to let people know they can get a hold of Ron or me by sending an email to asktsoe@verisage.com. The website, again, is The Soul of Enterprise. We do have the Patreon channel, patreon.com/TSOE. But right now, a word from our sponsor, including Woodard.
All clear. Back in 2.
Cool.
I blew it, Jordan. It wasn't James Buchanan. It was Vernon Smith.
Oh, Vernon Smith. Yeah.
And I put in the link to the Amazon book. It's called Humanomics. And he wrote it for somebody else. What was that?
No, Gary Hamel. That's Humanocracy.
Okay.
Yeah, Humanocracy. Yeah. Right. No, Vernon Smith, Humanomics. Yeah, he wrote it with another guy, but I found it really interesting because they dive into Smith's work and they pull out all these behavioral things. It's really cool. Especially theory of moral sentiments, as you would expect, because that was really interesting. But who's the famous actress, Ed? Not Glenn Close, the other one, the one that just has won 1 million Oscars.
Meryl Streep?
Thank you. Meryl Streep.
Okay.
I wish I could find this, but you were talking about it's all personal, relational. There's an interview with her where she's asked, you're so successful, what have you learned? And she goes, well, I've learned that life isn't like college or acting school. Life's like high school, because in high school, it's all about cliques and the group you hang out in. And it was just beautiful the way she said it. It was like, no, it's not. It's not college where you're stuffing all this stuff in your head and you think that's going to advance you. No, it's all about relationships. It's more like high school.
Yeah.
It was just a great point.
Well, I like to reframe office politics as prioritizing relationships over outcomes, which suddenly makes it sound wonderful instead of terrible. So it's interesting that we immediately with politics assume that it's negative.
Yeah.
Well, the research that shows if you have a best friend, you're more engaged and you're less likely to quit. You know,
Oh,
that's kind of, I don't know if that's causation or correlation, but it's interesting either way.
Yeah.
it's usable either way.
Yeah.
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 Back in 30 seconds.
Yeah. But I would say more correlation, but it's anyway. Jordan, have you done any work with Jody Thompson on results only work environment? You should probably, because we can connect you, but autonomy is her big thing. Like her thing is, why do we just define a position by its results? We don't care where you do it, achieve these results.
I love it.
Yeah. Autonomy, self-governance, I think is what it means in Greek.
Yeah.
Those three things you put out: autonomy, mastery, connection. That's Daniel Pink stole that, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Yeah. Okay.
But he
thought so.
acknowledges that he stole it. So
Okay. Okay. Yeah, like Malcolm Gladwell stole the tipping point from
Right.
Everett Rogers or something. Yeah. Yeah.
As long as they acknowledge it, it's all right.
Yeah. True.
All right, we are coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We're here with Jordan Birnbaum from the Glinda Group. And Jordan, and this one, man, I was on my desk cheering. Your article, Why HR Can't Work. Man, I can't tell. I hate HR. I think it's the most destructive function. I think it's administrative, not strategic.
Yeah.
You point out it was born in World War I,
Yep.
which is kind of interesting.
Yep.
Because I think the annual appraisal, which comes from behavioral psychologists, was born around the same time. You know, the presenting problem.
Yep.
Talk to me about why HR can't work in archetypes, because I love this take on it.
Yeah, so it's interesting. When I was working on Compass back at ADP, and we were really coming up against, is the purpose here to evaluate someone's performance or to support it? And it was just so telling how different the two approaches would be. And it really kind of felt like one was a guidance counselor and the other was a dean of students. One was there to sort of build you up and do whatever they could to set you up for success moving forward. And the other one was there to make sure like there will be consequences if you screw up. And of course, nowhere was the dean of students also the guidance counselor, because those two personas are totally at odds with each other and they cancel each other out. And that's exactly what HR is. HR is both the dean of students and the guidance counselor simultaneously, which is why they don't get taken seriously as either. And it is so unfortunate because the majority of HR practitioners are actually great. And they have their hands and feet tied behind their backs. And it's really frustrating to watch, especially when I think there are relatively simple solutions.
Like splitting them up, like you say, make these things different functions. I love the counselor and group, the dean of students and the guidance counselor archetypes. It reminds me, I mean, HR, they seem to they remind me of the Stasi. They have a little dossier on everybody with all your annual performance appraisals, which has got to be the biggest waste of time that I've ever seen in my life. Have you found, especially larger organizations, because Ed and I try and keep a list of them, that have ditched the annual performance appraisal?
So there was a move towards this a while back, and then they discovered that it was actually creating even more chaos. And so I think that the most progressive moves now are more like quarterly or weekly or monthly, where it's not such a big lift, and just trying to make it so that there is some sense of performance that's being conveyed across, 4 times a year instead of once a year. So not such a big lift, and also to keep it small enough that it's manageable. And also maybe make it less susceptible to recency bias, which, when you do a performance evaluation every 12 months, you're really just evaluating every November, and everything else gets forgotten. So there are some moves towards it. I think that what's interesting about a performance review is that we're still unclear what it is that we're trying to accomplish with it. And like HR, trying to do two contradictory things simultaneously makes sure that it doesn't work. So if the performance appraisal is to give the organization the clearest understanding of people's performances, then it should be structured one way. If it's about keeping people motivated and engaged and excited about moving forward, then it should be structured in an entirely different way. But because we try to accomplish both at the same time, we actually are creating situations where we're asking managers to discourage performance. Managers will be forced to do things to demoralize people in the name of fulfilling the need of the performance management policy. So it's again, a lot of these things simply need to be deconstructed. We need to look at what is it that they're supposed to accomplish, and let's just let each individual initiative have its own execution. Because when we try to accomplish more than one thing at a time is when everything gets screwed up.
Yeah, Marcus Buckingham was brought into Deloitte, one of the big four, to revamp their annual performance. And there was a big HBR cover story on it. And it was really interesting. But let me ask you this. Ed and I, for 2 decades now, have been saying the best thing to get rid of the performance appraisal is to substitute it with after-action reviews like they do in the military. Phenomenal policy, shares learning, and actually improves future performance. That's what I think the annual performance appraisal is designed to do. But all the academic research says, if anything, it has a negative effect on future performance. What do you think about after-action reviews?
Oh, I'm a big fan. I'm actually, so with the Glinda Group right now, we are in beta with a product that encourages employees at the end of every week to capture their wins. And the reason that their real incentive to do it is that every Monday we send a template of the wins to the manager and say, select one win for each person, and then hit this button to send out a congratulations message. And so each week the team gets a message highlighting one win from each team members, which is what keeps people excited to continue to share their wins. But when this happens, we start to build up an incredible database of like, hey, this is what the person is focused on and maybe what they're not focused on. And it'll give us a sense of where people are spending their time. And I feel like that kind of functionality should start to both provide real-time performance reviews and then even guidance, both individually and organizationally, about where can we start to shift our focus to be more aligned with the broader strategy.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm really intrigued by one of the effects of the after-action review, how we talk about the psychological safe space where you can admit mistakes. Well, if you watch like the Thunderbirds or the Blue Angels do AAR after an air show or something, they're really hard on themselves and they all help one another, and they're not worried about getting fired or getting a mark on their annual performance. I mean, it's just a safe place to recognize that this is a learning tool. We're trying to improve future performance. And I don't know, HR is the last people that get it, in my opinion.
Well, I think, again, my experience has been that I have way more empathy and compassion for HR practitioners than I do for HR as an institution, because it's most of the HR practitioners with whom I have worked over the course of my career are great. And have their hands, and they're always just in the most impossible situations. And I've never seen a salesperson in an impossible situation, or a product person, or a customer success person. And no other job that I have ever seen has dueling priorities and conflicting archetypes anywhere in the organization. Only HR is burdened with this. And I think part of it is because people are the hardest things to deal with. They're very hard to define. And so somehow we decided, let's just take all people issues and throw them into one big unit, as though like people is a defining characteristic, when in fact it's infinite. So we could do a lot better simply by saying one part of HR is there for the employees, the other part of HR is there for the organization, and they are not the same people, nor are they the same job.
Yeah, I love that. It was a great way to frame it with the archetypes. They can't do both of these things. It's fantastic. Well, Jordan, this has flown by. Thank you so much for coming back. Hang with us as we go through a close. But Ed, what do we have coming up next week?
Next week, we are going to do our Woodard Roundtable with 3 folks from Woodard. It's going to be a deep dive on what they see in the profession and professions today. So
Awesome. I'll see you in 167 hours.
this has been The Soul of Enterprise, Business in the Knowledge Economy, sponsored by Woodard, building your ideal practice with coaching, education, community, and resources. Join us next week at 1 p.m. Eastern, on 3 p.m. Eastern, that's noon Pacific. In the meantime, please visit us on the web at www.thesoulofenterprise.com.
All clear. Great show.
All right.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Jordan.
Thanks, Voice
Thanks,
America,
Dan.
Jordan.
Yeah, Voice America, Jordan. Thank you.
I'm
Have a
off
great
to
weekend.
a sales call.
Oh, okay.
Awesome. Okay, Jordan,
All right.
thank you so much.
Take
That was
care.
awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, let's not be strangers. I really enjoyed
Yes.
that.
Yeah,
Okay,
it'd be
cool.
great to have you
Bye,
back.
guys.
Awesome.
Whew. Overtime.
Yeah, I really like that archetype thing, Ed, when he said, their guidance counselor and the, the dean of, like the vice principal that does and they have to do both. That's
Well,
a
that's
really good.
the Bill James article, because we are a nation. We are not a nation of hallway monitors. We are a nation who likes to torture hallway monitors.
Yeah. I love the line about we take good players and turn them into shitty coaches and vice versa. It's
Yeah,
so
that's
true.
The
So
way he put it
true.
was like after his first rookie year, they would make him a coach.
That's hysterical. Yeah, just like when they take us the best salesman and make him a sales manager.
Oh yeah,
Nobody
No.
ever succeeds in that role.
No.
It's like stop doing this.
Nope.
Okay,
No, I love the T-shirt, Greg. I love the T-shirt. Defund HR.
Yeah, that's
Defund
phenomenal.
HR, yeah. And Jordan had a really good point. The individuals who work in the HR profession are wonderful, but
Yes,
something happens when it becomes human resources.
they're in a shitty system.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah. His take on stuff was really interesting. The way he would frame things, but I didn't get to my big disagreement with him though about the age thing. But that's okay. We'll get him
Yes.
back. My stack is full of Greg. So Greg, Perplexity has now buried in it DeepSeek.
Yep.
That will tell you about Tiananmen Square.
That will answer all your questions, and its servers are here in the U.S., so there's no security. Have you played with it at all?
Not inside of Perplexity, but I do know the background and why, the three, you guys called it the 3 T's, right? Tiananmen, Tibet, and Taiwan, why
yes.
they are
Right.
working inside of DeepSeek. So DeepSeek is an open source model. You can lift DeepSeek up off of the China-based servers and put it where you would like. There are also 2 I'm being very, very pedantic about this, but there are 2 levels to DeepSeek, right? One of them is the quick and dirty answer level. The other is the more of the reasoning model. And it turns out that the quick and dirty answer level, which is what's baked into Perplexity, has no problem answering questions about the 3 T's, whereas the reasoning model will actually stop you and say, I'm sorry, Dave, I can't talk about that, right? So as an open source platform, Perplexity has lifted the technology known as DeepSeek up off of a Chinese server and placed it presumably somewhere here in the United States. It's a great model, though, because what I think is happening, that we've had some time to digest this, right, is that we are experiencing another acceleration of technology, and in this case, as what happens with most technologies, it's getting cheaper and cheaper to operate. The results are not necessarily as good, right? So if you go out to Claude because you're a software engineer and you're trying to solve a pretty hard problem, Claude will help you do that in many instances. DeepSeek will fail a little bit at that, right? But there are 2 different angles here, right? One is a consumer angle, and one is let's call it a business angle, right? And the consumer product that we know today is DeepSeek inside of Perplexity or some kind of GPT level style platform is becoming cheaper and cheaper. The business model for GPT or large language models is going to remain expensive because there's so much more value there when you can point a large language model at a set of data you own and need to analyze. And I don't think that there's a better company out there today that represents the upside potential with respect to taking a large language model and pointing it at a wildly large data set specific to an organization other than Palantir, right? Palantir recognizes that the government, specifically branches of the government like the CIA, have massive amounts of data and they need a large language model pointed at that data to better analyze that data. Now, I'd like to say that I know exactly what Palantir is doing. The truth is nobody does, right?
Nobody
But
does.
that has to be part of what they're doing. Whereas on the consumer side, as consumers, we just want the cheapest access to a large language model. And that seems to be today to represented by a DeepSeek style model, and in this case, baked into Perplexity. So I do see a bifurcation in the market here between the two.
Interesting. Let me read you two headlines. This is from Gail Pooley of Superabundance, his Substack. On February 1st, he wrote, this is Saturday, AI models went from 100 million to 5 million with DeepSeek. We talked about that. Then to $30 in 7 days. And he talks about, I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, G.I. Pan, this guy from Berkeley.
Yep.
Is that right?
It was like, I heard $50, but I'll take 30 for,
he said 30. Yep. Yeah. Okay. And then, Greg, on February 6th, Tuesday, just last week, AI went from 100 million to 30. This week, it goes to $3. And he cites this guy, Liang Chen, who's at the Chen and a team of PhD computer scientists at Peking University and University of Hong Kong, introduced Deep Agent R1V, a new A1 model costing less than $3. It's available on github.com.
Yeah.
That's friggin' amazing.
Isn't it?
We're $3. We're $3.
I don't know what the future holds with respect to my next statement, but I'm looking forward to what this statement brings to us. I'm looking forward to a large language model on my phone, a proper large language model on my phone. And at first I thought it was quite a few years away. Now I wouldn't be surprised. What are we on, the iPhone 16 now, I think, right? Something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if the 17 has a number of large language models in the App Store that you can choose from. And that to me, in 2 years' time, from needing 500,000 NVIDIA chips in a data center powered exclusively by a new reactor on 3 Mile Island to running on my iPhone is pretty stunning.
It's friggin' amazing. I've never seen anything like this. 100 million to $3.
And in a week.
God.
Yeah, that's. But who knows when maybe it's 30 cents. For Greg, maybe the large language model is built into the next iOS.
Yeah. Okay. So the reason I stopped short of saying that and said App Store instead is because Apple has not displayed a high level of competency in this area.
No.
So I'm just not sure
That's
if they can pull it off, right? They certainly have the level of pedigree in their employee base to do it, no doubt, right? But whether or not organizationally they are focused on that or can make it happen, I think that's a separate question. I'm a bit concerned about, and I know that I'm a bit concerned about Apple's performance in the AI space, and I know that it's too soon for me to say that and be fair to the organization that is Apple, but I have a feeling that they will once again create a my way or the highway style approach to large language models, and it will fall flat for a man. I'll give you a great example of something else Apple did this week, which is releasing Apple Invites. So Apple Invites is an Evite system. You can go to the App Store now and you can download an app made by Apple called Apple Invites. But unless you have an iCloud account and an iPhone and you send the invites out to other iCloud account holders, or those invites you sent out are to people that are willing to create an iCloud account, it kind of falls flat. It's an Apple invite system meant for people that use Apple products, right? And that's just one very small example of this dogmatic approach that Apple tends to take to development, which, Ed, is the only reason I say maybe App Store and not Apple.
Yeah, but I think this is part of the challenge that Apple has self-imposed, and perhaps rightly so, is that they are also the one who wants to make sure that individual privacy is maintained. And squaring that circle with the large language model on your phone,
yes,
that's gonna be the challenging piece.
And does that
and that might be rightly so, though. That they might win because of that, because people are like, well, I would trust that Apple will do that for me.
Yeah. Do you think that their approach to privacy hurts them or helps them in this case, right? Because obviously, the more data you have to ingest into these large language models, the more effective it can be. And Apple's approach to privacy limits the amount of data on purpose that they have access to. What do you guys think about that?
I think it is hurting them now in the short run, but it may help in the long run. That would be my spin on it.
Fair. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure we pay much attention to privacy anymore. We seem to like the convenience of everything, So I'm not sure. I mean, I
won't put DeepSeek on my phone. I won't put TikTok on my phone. No,
I won't either. I do like Apple for the privacy, but
yeah,
I think I'm in a minority.
The three of us might be the only three that don't have TikTok or DeepSeek on our phones. DeepSeek was at the top of the App Store.
I know.
Almost immediately, right?
And the reports I heard that I have not played with it other than to ask it about Tiananmen Square and then post about it. But from what I hear, it's much more conversational. It's kind of folksy, and people really like the way that it converses. It's got a very nice style.
Tyler said it's got a great personality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Well, there's a joke in there somewhere. Right?
Yeah, there is. The other development that Tyler Callan also pointed out on the Honestly podcast. He's like, it is now smarter than me, writing on a subject of economics.
Yeah, it can write like a peer-reviewed academic journal article better than I can, and it can do it in 60 seconds.
Right. And what Barry Weiss is like, well, that's scary since you're like the smartest person I know.
You know.
But yeah, he just said it is now better than me at writing a peer-reviewed economic article.
Yeah.
Wow.
We would have never thought it would have gotten there.
So his point is, what does PhD mean now?
Yeah. What does any credential mean? Kind of calls the whole thing into question.
Yeah, I'm only 1 year behind you in terms of investing a massive amount of our savings into the college education of my children. So I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah, no kidding.
No, I mean, we will still. He did go on to say, because he's not one of these. We're just going to sit around, and drink Mai Tais and have the bots do it. He's like, we will continue to find ways to serve one another. That's what we humans do. Yes. We'll figure it out. It may take some time, but
every single technological advance that is years beyond where we were is followed by someone saying, and this will free up all of our time and we won't have to work. I'm sure we can go back to the dawn of the industrial era and hear the same thing.
Yep, absolutely.
We're now putting the threshold together, and Greg, you and I have been working with it. I was telling Ron about this, and I forgot, because I haven't been an entrepreneur in 25 years, right? So the last time I owned my own company, it's like, I forgot two things about being an entrepreneur. One, how much incredible work it is, especially when you're creating everything for the first time. And the second thing is how quickly time goes by in your day. And I sit there at 5 o'clock and go, I've been here all day and I haven't gotten shit done.
I don't know, Ed. I want to see your timesheet on that. What the hell you been doing?
and I'm using AI. And
Yeah.
I know, and there's just more stuff to do.
When I was making the decision about starting a marketing agency, I called 8, 9, 10 people who had run marketing agencies in the past and said, is this the best decision I've ever made, or is this the worst decision I've ever made? And it was on the phone for 15 minutes. Like, I didn't do the whole let's go out to coffee thing because I knew I wouldn't get as many responses, right? And by and large, I received some pretty positive encouragement, right? But the one thing that a gentleman by the name of Brian said to me was, keep a list, because at least I know personally, this is him speaking, on my list, if I don't get it done by 11 a.m. that day, it's not getting done that day. And that's not to say that he stops working at 11 a.m., right? But your day will pile up on itself, and you will have things to do for members in your case, for the continued development of the organization. I mean, there's all sorts of things that will get in your way. So his way of saying that was, if I don't get it done by 11 a.m., it's not getting done that day.
Yeah. Eat the frog first. I forget who said that, but yeah.
Yep.
Ron, you said you had a stack full of stuff.
No, that I thought that was big enough. I mean, I'm blown away. We're down to $3 now. It's like, this is cheaper than Starbucks.
Large language model code, cheaper than Starbucks. Go figure. So that's on GitHub, huh?
Yeah, it said it was on GitHub.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, no doubt. Just to talk business for just a minute, we are still live streaming.
Yes, how's that going?
Cool.
The live stream went really well today. We announced it not even 30 minutes before we went live for the first time ever, and we've never really gone live across multiple platforms. So we had 6 viewers. That's good. So 6 people just happened to be thumbing through social at the time and joined us. The stream was pretty flawless. So the service that we're using was rock solid. There was nothing wrong with the streams. And in fact, I had the Zoom meeting up on one monitor. I had the streaming service up on another monitor. And then I had, at any point in time, YouTube Live or Facebook Live or X Live all running simultaneously. Wow. And my bandwidth was screaming at me, but it wasn't bringing itself to a crawl. So I was able to monitor everything, and it was not a problem. One of the benefits of streaming live is that I had to upgrade our X account to the Pro plan, which means you should log in this weekend and play with Grok, because you now have access to the full featured Grok, which is X's AI system, and it is. I wouldn't say that it's conversational like DeepSeek. I would say that it's a sarcastic bastard.
It's snarky.
It's snarky. It's really fun to play with. And it has fewer bounds than your better known large language models and their associated GPT platforms. So for example, you could tell it that you want a picture of Elon Musk smoking a pipe doing crack cocaine, and it'll go, yeah, no problem. Here you go. It doesn't stop you, right? So anything in the Anarchist Cookbook is effectively
fabulous
free game on Grok, right? But you guys have access to it now because we had to upgrade the Twitter account in order to live stream. So go for it. Play around with it.
That's the Ask TSOE account, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But in terms of the live stream itself, I didn't notice anything that didn't work. So first time, no test, everything worked. The only thing we're waiting for is approval from LinkedIn, shockingly. For LinkedIn company pages, they look at each request to become a live streaming partner individually, and it takes them several days. So because we started this process this week, we didn't get approval from LinkedIn in time. So we were on Facebook, X, and YouTube. Next week we'll be on all of those plus LinkedIn.
Okay. And can you also then stream to Otter then, Greg? Could you add yet another stream to Otter?
I will give that a shot.
Because then you can have your Otter back.
Yeah. No, I was willing to let go of the Otter live transcription service in favor of live streaming. So it worked out well, and I was still able to capture the best parts of the interview with Jordan.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Good stuff.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So are you sleeping in the woods this week, Greg?
No, I am not. I am sleeping in the woods next weekend.
Next weekend. Okay.
Next weekend. Yeah, next weekend we sleep in the woods. The 2 weekends ago we went to 2 weekends ago, Ed, I forget, but whenever you and I were trying to chat via text over the weekend, and I wasn't able to get back to you because we didn't have service, we went down to the Swanee River in Florida and we went canoeing, which was very cool because we got in a canoe at an outfitter and we canoed down the river to a state park that is only accessible via the river. So unless you bring your canoes in, that you're not going to see anyone else at the camping area of the state park. And there was this really large, built up onto the bank of the river. There was like canoe storage where you would just like put your canoes up on a rack, and then you would walk up this platform that wound up through the woods and out into the camping area. The next day, we got back in the canoes, went about 10 miles downriver, and got picked up by the outfitters and went home. So the
Nice.
Swanee River was awesome. And I actually didn't know that the Swanee River is the basis for Florida's state song. That was a new
Way
fact
down
that
upon the Swanee River.
I mean, I know the song. I didn't know that it was Florida's
It's
state
Florida
song.
state song. Ah. What
Whereabout
peach
is that?
song? Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was just really sort of I'd say about 10 miles over the state line between Georgia and Florida, off of Interstate 75. So it wasn't hard to get to at all.
Yeah. What peach song is the state song of Georgia, Greg?
I'm gonna guess Ray Charles.
Georgia on my mind. Could
Yeah,
be.
and it is. There you go. Yeah, it's
Georgia on
Georgia
My
on
Mind.
My Mind by Ray Charles.
Oh, okay. So,
That would be Vicki Lawrence. That's the night that the lights.
Yep.
and,
A little bit of a more positive message with Ray Charles.
Yeah. Well, Yellow Rose of Texas, of course, is Texas's state song. So,
I think we
which is about a prostitute, but hey, whatever.
So we should get into your bonus episode, Ed. Don't forget to turn the live streaming off.
Yes, we got to turn the live streaming off because you don't get that.
Yeah.
So you got to only on Patreon for now.
Yep. You guys get to your bonus episode. I'm gonna go pick my son up from track practice at school and get my weekend started.
Running.
Cool.
Okay.